Badly. Like, on top of the fact that I grew up a Thundercats fan anyway, the original cartoons, so being able to be a part of that universe at all was great. But it was such a fantastic cast, being able to work with actors that, I look up to so much, like Corey Burton, D. Bradley Baker, Clancy Brown, and the rotating cast of talent that comes through there has been brilliant. So it was great, And we were all still friends, like the whole cast for the most part still hangs out, except for Manuel Shrieky, because, she is a star and does stuff. But the rest of us voiceover folk out there, part of it, still hang out every now and then. So it was sad to see it go away. It was kind of the weird place Cartoon Network was in, and they, no one really knows what happened. The ratings were good, toy sales were, okay. But I think it had more to do with, personally, I think it had more to do with Lego's Chima property being a little more Cartoon Network's alley. Strange, a fantasy world about cat people fighting against lizard people in a magical realm of fantasy. Sounds familiar. But anyway, yeah, we pushed pretty hard on it, but it was ultimately, Cartoon Network's decision. I would love to. I mean, it's entirely up to them. I thoroughly enjoyed being part of Fate Zero. It's a great story. The character of Kirutsugu was a very interesting, very subtle layered performance that kind of unfolded towards the back half of the series. And we and Tony, the director, worked really hard on making sure that we got the character we wanted him to be. So I'm very, very proud of that project, and I would love to be involved in the whatever way they like to include Kirutsugu in the next remake. So hopefully, fingers crossed. Oh man, I'm really excited for Levi. It's daunting, of course, whenever you step into any character that's so already pre-established as a fan base, especially when they are already pre-established listening to the Japanese voice. No matter how hard you try, there's going to be that initial backlash of, it's different than my guy! It's going to happen. I think ultimately people will appreciate the effort we put into the dub, because really all of us came to it with a point of passion. I got into the series after booking it before I worked on it, so I could research it. And after marathoning it on one Sunday, intending to only watch a couple episodes, but nevertheless, marathoning it until 2, 3 a.m., I fell in love with the show. And so going for Levi was a combination of keeping that cold, removed kind of, he works for the betterment of everyone, but at the same point he sees himself very much as a solo individual. Other than his relationship with Irvin and the people that are directly under him, he's this rogue that has been forced into a position where he's within a military structure. And while he sticks to the structure, you can see there's still that little bit of frustration with how the structure runs. And that kind of comes through a little bit later in the series when he's talking to Aaron as they're riding through the forest, the female Titan chasing him, where he's basically giving him the advice like, follow whatever you think is right. You make the choice. You'll just have to live with that choice. It's not about what's right or what's wrong or what your officers tell you. You do what you think you should do and just live with it. And you really kind of see that interesting dynamic. So I really wanted to come to Levi as a cold, methodical character who enjoys the process of Titan killing in a very kind of self-serving way, but does show passion in moments when people that are close to him are hurt or killed, and he has to kind of keep himself contained a little bit in those moments. So try to bring a little bit of that through, while still keeping true to the character that had already been established. So. One, yes, it was a very daunting task to step into. Having been a fan of the character since his first appearance in the second part of the series, I felt a personal duty to make sure that I brought him to life best I could. Plus, Paul Mercer, who voiced him previously in Resident Evil 4 and Generation, is a friend of mine. We worked on projects together, so it was both a combination of love for the character and love for the character that Paul had established in those recent titles. So, kind of drawing on inspirationally and texture-wise, and kind of finding a point where it's close enough to the previous performance, but also taking into account the things that have happened to Leon since that period of time, and trying to get across kind of the world-wearied aspect of him in Resident Evil 6. The fact that he's gone a little bit from the cocksure, kind of take on the world, bring it, I got it type Leon he was in Resident Evil 4, to the is it even worth it anymore? Nothing seems to change, it's only getting worse. Am I actually having an effect on this constant war with, whatever the latest letter virus was, trying to both combine the pre-established character traits with kind of my take on that hardened Leon character. So it was a daunting task, but one I was really up for, and one that I thoroughly enjoyed the process. process of. First and foremost, I can't stress it enough, the latter half of the phrase voice actor is actor. You know, being able to do voices and having a cool texture and be able to mimic things is great. Everyone has their best interpretation of Stewie or Homer Simpson, you know, and that's a great skill set to have. But the baseline you have to build off of is the ability to act, the ability to interpret copy, to break down a character, to break down, you know, what drives a scene, what drives your personal character's goals and the layered emotions they have in a sequence, being able to break down a scene and what the purpose of that scene is, and then from that, perform it and layer the voices on top of it. And that just comes through experience, classes, training. So my biggest suggestion is to continue pushing towards honing your craft as an actor. Then you can apply those skills, and that's really what gives the basis of a strong performance. From there, once you're in a place of comfort with your ability, and you're feeling really competitive, and you're just chafing at the bit, then start building a resume. You know, look in your local areas and see what, you know, animation schools are looking for voices to build you know, real material. Look for local commercial copy that you can read, or get involved in any local radio stations, or just kind of get the feel for the process and the business. Build some connections there. Beyond that, if you're looking for video games and animation specifically, you're going to have to live where a lot of the work is. It's one of those difficult things where New York, Dallas, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and a handful of a couple other areas are the only places that support enough work to support you. So it's going to be hard to get into animation if you're living in a small rural city in Wyoming. So, you know, that doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means if you really want to take this seriously, you kind of have to jump into both feet first and be willing to make the risk of going to where the work is. And understand it might not work out. It's a very competitive thing. You know, I've worked my ass off for many years, and even now it's like I'm enjoying this while it's here. You never know. Any sort of career in performance is a perpetual push to maintain. So if it's something you're really passionate about, then be willing to maybe jump for a change of scenery and give it all you got. It was a transition, a brief one, mind you, because when it comes down to it, as much as I love the original show, when you think back, you're like, yeah, well, you know, he's got the sword, and he's kind of the upstart who wants to change things, but isn't, you know, necessarily the wisest of the group. You have Panthro, who's kind of like the patron, the badass of the group that makes sure everything's in order. Tigra he was the architect. You know,
yeah.
He didn't have a really strong, poignant personality trait in the original series. Problem with a lot of the animation of that era too. So sometimes the writing didn't really. Not every character had a very strong trait. So the direction they went with this Tiger, I thought, was a lot more interesting. This kind of heated, entitled, you know, character that, you know, you kind of dislike it a little bit, but you like him in spite of that. He's a bad boy. He's kind of into himself. He treats his brother a little roughly. In some cases, he might not be right. Sometimes he is right. But nevertheless, he believes in himself entirely. And so it was kind of fun to play that dynamic, especially with Will Friedle, who played Lionel. Our characters were so drastically different for the show that it was fun to bring a new form of take on that character, from what I recall. That was intense. That was my first directorial debut on any project, let alone a live action one. I just bought a camera. Like me and my friends got fed up with just waiting for projects to happen, and we wanted to make something ourselves. So it was very early in the realm of web series development. Like we went up the same year that Guild had just come out, and a few other independent web series. So very low budget, very low budget. I think when all was said and done, I made a total of negative $3,000. It was lucrative, but I was very proud of it. And it was a lot of seat of our pants filming, trying to find locations through favors in Los Angeles because it's expensive to film anywhere in LA. So it was all like, who do you know? You got a buddy who has a restaurant? If we agreed, you know, to maybe like wash his car, can we film in his bar for like an hour? You know, so there's a lot of like finagling locations, finding a lot of really talented actors that were willing to work for nothing. But it was a good, strong enough script and a strong enough final idea that we were all very, very clear on what we wanted to create with this. That we got on board a lot of extremely talented people, very passionate people, to make something for nothing, and it did a lot better than we expected. It got a really, really fantastic fan base, and forged a lot of great friendships. A lot of the people that I met on that production are still some of my closest friends and creative partners to this day. So it was a hard production. I think when all was said and done, the entire series running time is about 3.5 hours. And we did all that in a year on no budget, including post effects, costume creation, which I created a lot of the costumes and props, as well as doing location scouting, post effects and editing, audio, sound design. Like we all wore many hats for that project, aside from the aforementioned physical paint. Cartoon character. Mine always goes to video games immediately, but no.
That works.
Video games included as well?
Absolutely.
I'm going to have to go with Tifa Lockhart from Final Fantasy VII. Not for obvious reasons. Partially for obvious reasons. But she's just like, of all the characters in the game, like Aerith was nice, but she was just very quiet and very timid, and for the most part wasn't a strong personality, whereas Tifa was like, not only could she kick your ass, but she was the one who stood up and like would not let anyone go down. She took over the leadership of the party when Cloud was down and out. She, like, I don't know, I just, as a character, I felt that she really exemplified that strong, go-getting, kind of sure of herself female persona that I find really attractive. So Tifa for me was definitely a very strong, thorough high school video game crush. I mean, overall, arcing most of my life has been Mel Blanc. I was the kid in 4th grade that when they gave us a biography report we had to do, these kids were like, I'll do George Washington, I'll do Abraham Lincoln. I did Mel Blanc. Like, who is that? I'm like, well, let me tell you. and so he was the person that I got into at a very young age, just to understand that all these cartoons I loved came from one person. It's incredible. And so he was the first inspiration. Currently in the industry, I've had the pleasure to work with people like D. Bradley Baker. He's a huge inspiration to me. I actually really enjoy working with Fred Tatasciore. He's a very, very sweet, like, gentle soul and incredibly talented individual. And there are other people that, it's one of those things where you look up to somebody and then you work with them and you become friends with them. It's weird because all of a sudden you're trying really hard to kind of contain your inner fanboy at times. So getting to work with people like Troy Baker, Travis Willingham, people that I followed their work for a while and are now working alongside, it's this strange kind of, oh, they don't realize I snuck in the room. Security will show up any minute now. So it's hard to pick one. Because I draw inspiration from so many people around me. Everyone has something to teach. And you always should be in a place where you're open to learn. So, yeah.